Throughout the 2024 presidential election cycle here in America, we've heard certain refrains coming from both sides of the aisle. And there's a particular refrain coming from the Kamala Harris camp, especially as it relates to economics, calling for an opportunity economy. Most people who have critiqued this idea, which in my opinion, it's a fallacious idea, and I'll get to why in a moment, have focused more on the positions espoused by Kamala Harris and her economic agenda, rather than actually addressing the premise that her economic agenda is built upon. So in this video, in typical Pensive politics fashion, we're going to actually evaluate the premise of the idea of an opportunity economy. And we're going to explain why Kamala's vision for an opportunity economy is not just, in my opinion, economically illiterate. That's its least worst offense, but it is also fallacious to the core and fundamentally dangerous to the American spirit in every way possibly imagined. Before we get into that, my friends, hope all of you are doing well. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Christian Watson. If you enjoy political and social commentary of the philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can to ensure that we can get our channel successful and get our message out there. We are almost at 20,000 subscribers, my friends. I am so excited. Hopefully by the time this election rolls around and it ends, we will be at that landmark so we can continue to inspire people to think deeper about the social and political issues that currently plague our nation and that require a deeper approach than is normally taken. Thank you guys so much for being here. Now please enjoy the video. So, the opportunity economy is one of the most, I think, interesting developments, and perhaps one of the least covered developments to come out of the Kamala Harris campaign. Now, as many of you know, I don't simply look at what is happening right now on this channel. I enjoy exploring ideas through the lens of history. So before I address the problems of the opportunity economy, it would do us very well to understand the role that this phrase has in the history of political and economic ideas, because as is true of many things that Kamala Harris says, this idea is not her own. She quite literally took it from the Labour Party in Britain. So I'll get into that right now. So the opportunity economy was first used by the Labour Party in Britain in the mid-1990s. Gordon Brown, a prime minister of the UK, he used it particularly during his tenure in the late 2000s to describe, in his terms, a contrast to the traditional kind of economy that is rooted in the stakeholders, that is rooted in those who actually have a stake in companies, those that actually have a stake in the success of businesses and institutions. Gordon Brown's entire idea was to make the opportunity economy the ideal economy, the aspirational economy, because that was supposedly in service of working people. So you see with this idea a dichotomy, a tension between a supposed tension, I should probably say, between working people and between big business. This is the leftist ideology when it comes to economics. It is a dichotomous, a two-option way of viewing a concept that actually does not do well with dichotomies, a concept that actually only does well when you understand just how significant it is to the functioning of a society, and that is economics. So, Kamala Harris took this, and I can confidently say she took this, because the Labour Party, according to the Washington Post, has actually been advising the Kamala Harris campaign during this election cycle on certain policy positions that she should have. Not only that, but the Labour Party is also sending over volunteers from the UK to get on the ground in America and swing states to campaign for Kamala Harris. That seems like foreign interference to me, but that's just my opinion. So, we already see here that this idea comes from a very long line of thinking, at least in the past 20 to 30 years, from leftist politicians on economic issues. Now, Kamala herself, I'll let her speak for herself, defines the opportunity economy as an economy in which people will not just get by, but be able to get ahead. In her words, and more ambition and aspiration would be the baseline indicators of economic success, not generational wealth. Here is a clip of Kamala talking about this right here.
I want Americans and families to be able to not just get by, but be able to get ahead. To thrive. Be able to thrive. I don't want you to have to worry about making your monthly rent if your car breaks down.
And of course, she goes on to say that our economy has grown better and better for those at the top and increasingly difficult for those that are trying to attain, build, and hold on to a middle-class life. So here, by trying to pose a tension between the haves and the have-nots, which is a really ancient tension that I think Kamala exploits, and that progressives generally exploit by being envious of those who actually achieve and aspire to excellence, and then with their envy try to justify bringing them down in order to bring someone up. So in other words, Kamala is espousing a zero-sum game here that is just not necessarily reflective of reality. That's the first issue. But the second issue, I think, is much more interesting. It's an empirical issue. Kamala's entire thesis, upon which she justifies the idea of an opportunity economy, is actually inconvenienced by the fact that there are more young millionaires and more young self-made people today in 2024 than there was even 10 years ago. Because for Kamala's idea of an opportunity economy to actually succeed, it must be true that it is indeed an economy that is right now that is not working for everybody, that only works for the most powerful. But that empirical fact that I mentioned clearly inconveniences that. According to the Federal Reserve, they found in 2023 that the average net worth of American families passed $1 million for the first time ever, growing 42% from $749,000 in 2019. I go on to quote this article. It says, quote, even accounting for inflation, which has been a very big issue in many of your lives, real average wealth shot up 23% in the last 3 years, according to the Fed survey of consumer finances. And the median wealth level also rose 37% to $193,000. The article goes on to say, just over 12% of American families, roughly 16 million, have more than $1 million in wealth. That's an increase from 2019 when only 9.8 million families had that status. Each year, millions upon millions of American families are becoming richer and more prosperous. Why? Because the economy today, there are so many more diversified avenues by which one can participate in the economy today that does not require you having a boss, that does not require you working at a brick and mortar store, but that instead embodies the American spirit of capitalism and allows you to create your own wealth with thrift and industriousness. This has been the case for a very long time, but it is especially pronounced in the modern day American life. This has been the case for a long time because we can see through the example of Henry Ford and other great achievers that this has always been true. The entrepreneurial spirit defines the American character when it comes to economics. In fact, I would say that capitalism is an essential part of the American national identity. But the internet has taken what Henry Ford did and made it look like peanuts compared to the expediency by which people who were not in their older ages, as Henry Ford was, can chase and obtain wealth quicker than their parents did. That's not to say the economy isn't bad. The economy is bad. I myself pay more for groceries. I pay more for a lot of things. I myself, I'm a 24-year-old male in Gen Z. I myself am not sure if I will ever own my first home ever. That is how bad things are. But I don't have to be a slave to the economic facts of the general economic facts of the day, because there are many people still succeeding in this horrible economy. And so I really want to touch into this, the sort of rise of the Gen Z self-made millionaires. And according to a 2021 survey by Ramsey Solutions, only 3% of people that have gotten rich have inherited more than $1 million from their parents. 79% of those people had no inheritance at all. So Kamala's thesis is further inconvenienced by the fact that most people who are getting rich today are not getting rich due to generational wealth. They are rather getting rich due to, again, thrift and industriousness. Again, there are a bunch of young millionaires. There are more than 600,000 millennial millionaires reported to the U.S. in 2022. And the number of Gen Z millionaires has also doubled. So with all these empirical facts out the way, we could stop right here and say the premise upon which her entire economic idea is built is incorrect, it's empirically wrong, and we can call it a day. But we do philosophy on this channel. So we have to go a little bit deeper. The true fallacy of Kamala's opportunity economy is that it defines the economy in such a way that paints a picture of the economy that is not true. In other words, it rests on an incorrect idea of what the economy is. To say that you want to have an opportunity economy is to endeavor in a redundant statement, because by virtue of the economy definition, the economy is inherently a place of opportunities. Kamala is leveraging the word opportunity as a means by which to justify political intervention in the economy, which almost always ends up in disaster. But before we can really understand that, we must understand what an economy actually is. An economy is simply the sum result of human behavior that involves the combination of two things: creative potential and interpersonal cooperation for the exchange of value. The exchange of value sometimes takes the form of goods and services. Let me say it again. An economy is the sum result, that means the outcome, of human behavior that involves the combination of your creative potential, that is your human ability to use your faculties for greatness, your creative potential, which defines you as a human being, which is presupposed by your reason, and interpersonal cooperation, that is how you leverage your skills in cooperation with other people to exchange for value, to create value. Under this definition, the economy is, again, inherently a place of opportunity, and it's inherently a place that, by virtue of the definition, does best for those who partake in it in some way, shape, or form. And it does even better for those who partake in it more or leverage a particularly unique skill that an average worker or an average person may not particularly have. This is not a value judgment about the value of the average worker or the average person versus the highly skilled or the highly industrious person. No, it's merely an acknowledgement that in life there are different outcomes, and trying to achieve a quality of outcomes is not necessarily even logical, and trying to achieve a quality of opportunity is also a fallacy as well, because in life we're all going to have our own different opportunities. In other words, the best man ultimately has the ability to win the more decentralized the economy is. But the moment the economy becomes a object of political fascination is the moment the government can begin propping up certain people and suspending the laws of economics to engage in political manipulation. This is what subsidies are. This is why, no matter how many times you've seen a progressive politician like Barack Obama or whoever else try to subsidize green energy, like Solyndra and Solar Trust, the famous examples, they have almost always failed, because you cannot subsidize something that is not demanded by the most people in the market. It will not fail. It will simply be on life support for a very, very, very little while. But there's also something else we have to talk about as well. There's general problems that really go into how Kamala is presenting this opportunity economy. Beyond the inherent contradiction that is the redundancy of trying to say that we need an opportunity economy when economies are inherently concerned with opportunity. The word opportunity is here, as I mentioned before, being used as a euphemism for centralization. If you think about this, there are two spheres of life. There's a public sphere and the private sphere. The economy is in the private sphere, which is the sphere of society. For Kamala as a political candidate to say that I want to create an opportunity economy means I want to get involved in the economy myself and reorganize its terms to benefit my agenda. And that has disastrous consequences. And that has also an impossible quantity to it, because if you understand that the economy is simply the result of a bunch of human relationships, there is no possible way as a politician you can calculate the amount of those human relationships and then use them as a tool or use them in a way to shape into your own agenda, because there's just so many different relationships. This is the classic calculation problem that people like Hayek have pointed out in their own economic discourses. But another thing that I think is really important is that the word opportunity here is being leveraged as a political symbol. A political symbol is an idea that has a general meaning, but whose general meaning can be subverted or changed by those who wield the idea. So, for example, most people understand what an opportunity is, and most people would like to have opportunities. So when you combine that general idea with a particular economic agenda, most people, without thinking about it, will actually go along with that idea despite the consequences it has and despite the implications it has, which is one of the reasons, again, why this term is so empty, because it can mean anything that Kamala Harris wants it to mean, and the details are very, very light. There are some positions that she has laid out on her website, but those positions themselves are not concrete enough to tell us exactly what an opportunity economy means when taken in terms of first principles. And finally, the word opportunity is also a vehicle, and I think a euphemism, for equity. Remember, she said that she wants things to be fair. She wants people to have to be able to aspire. She wants fairness, essentially. Well, the problem is political power cannot ensure fairness. Political power can simply ensure, at the very most, that a particular group wins and a particular group loses. I'll go even further than that. Political power can also ensure that the scales are tipped in favor of X, Y, and Z to the exclusion of all else. So in other words, if you really want fairness, then I would encourage you to, number one, not put any rules in place or any agendas in place that are going to tip the scales, and simply allow people to engage in economic relationships on their own accord and let things happen as they may. That is the most fair of any economic policy that I've ever seen. The moment there is interventionism within the economy, however, fairness becomes nothing more than an abstraction that is used to justify economic tyranny. Now, there was a lot of controversy that Kamala Harris elicited over her race-centric plan to offer an opportunity economy to black men, which involved centralizing cryptocurrencies, which involved doing things with marijuana and so on and so forth. And a lot of people were offended over it. And the reason I am not covering it very much in this video is because it is simply a single rung on the ladder. It is simply a single system of tortured economic thinking that is not grounded in anything more than aspiration and grounded in anything more than a lack of understanding of economics that produces such a ill-advised plan. But I'll address it one moment, because I think there's one thing that is very important for us to understand with that particular thing, and it's that, as I mentioned, this plan is a euphemism for centralization. And if cryptocurrencies become hijacked by the governments of the world, which they are essentially becoming, then that means the only method right now by which to trade and buy in a decentralized and even a private way that governments cannot control will be centralized, and it will be controlled. This is the whole concern over a central bank digital currency that many people are worried about. Well, I think that an outcome of this opportunity economy plan would actually be the production of a central bank digital currency in the name of providing opportunity to black entrepreneurs or whoever else. But also, Kamala also has suggested giving loans to black businesses on the basis of their race to help them start up capital, without wanting those loans to be paid back, which would cause inflation, which would reduce opportunity for more people. And again, as I mentioned, subsidies don't take into account economic laws. So if these startups fail, then what happens? You will have wasted capital, you have created inflation for nothing, and the economy is not better off. In other words, my friends, the fundamental problem of the opportunity economy is that it presupposes that value creation takes place outside of the economy, not inside of the economy. That it comes from politics, not from people. That it happens to the economy. It does not occur in the economy or happen through the economy. And this is simply fallacious. The government creates no value. By virtue of its nature, the government is merely a wielder of power, and power can only reduce, stop, or stymie. It cannot create. Creativity and people with the creativity create. On that very basis, my friends, all of us ought to object to the Kamala Harris opportunity economy disaster as the philosophically unnecessary, the economically illiterate, and the Trojan horse idea that it actually is, my friends. And we should all embrace an idea of an economy led by us, the people, and not by the benevolent bureaucrats, the so-called benevolent bureaucrats that wish to run our lives. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to get our message out there. Study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.